When did you get into painting?
In elementary school.
Oh,
Art was my sanity.
Oh, okay.
You are a busy
Yeah.
man.
I think it's called ADD. But,
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Mermaid's Tale. Today, we have with us Gary Brown, who is the author of A Practical Guide to Changing Our World and also of A World of His Own. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Hi, Gary. Welcome to our studio.
Great to be here.
It's
Thank
pretty-
you so much for having me.
I'm glad we all fit in here
Yeah.
at the size of it and stuff. And thank you for being brave enough to come on to the next episode. Our first guest.
Mm-hmm.
Our first guest.
Our first guest, yeah.
Oh, what an honor.
So, and I guess we can start it out today with, I don't know how you want to go.
Let's just say, as a mention, this book is the one that just came out, two months ago that we published for Gary. Change a Practical Guide to Changing Our World. So that's how we know Gary. That's how we're associated with Gary, the author. But Gary is also an artist, and you'll see behind him one of his paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And he is also the author of his very first book, which was called World of His Own. So, yeah.
Well, Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself. A little bit about your former career. Have you always
Our
written
careers.
books and been an author? Or?
Oh no. I was born and raised in the Midwest in a little town called Aurora, Indiana, and had two sisters there. And my grandparents owned a dairy farm in a little town called Rising Sun, Indiana. And I loved being down on the farm, spent every minute that I could down there when I was a kid. As I got older, in my later teenage years, I kind of left the farm behind, developed an interest in, the usual stuff, cars and girls and horn rock music.
There you go.
And I started wanting to be a professional musician. So I'd always struggled in school. I had a hard time in school. It was hard for me to relate to it. About the only thing I could really relate to in the early school years was my art class.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my art class disappeared in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
had to get, serious about academics and real life.
I think a lot of creative folks have, a hard time in school.
In
I
school.
did. I did myself,
Yeah,
as a matter of
absolutely.
fact. We were just talking about that other day, my grades weren't good at all, but
Yeah.
it wasn't because I wasn't smart enough to do it. I just didn't find it interesting at all. And it didn't my brain and their brains didn't work together.
Right, yeah. Well, Einstein, too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So we're in good company.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think I've ever been put in the same as with Einstein, but I'll take it. I'll take it for sure.
Well, anyway, my saving grace there was in the 6th grade, I was able to get into the school band.
Oh, nice.
And I wanted to be a trumpet player because all my friends played trumpet. But I was so bad at playing the trumpet that one day the band teacher stopped us in the middle of a song, came over to me, took the trumpet out of my hands, and put his hands on my shoulders and herded me over to the trombone section, which consisted of one trombone player. So he took the horn, put it in my hands, told me how to hold it, and he said, blow. And as I recall, it was like a perfect B flat came out of the horn. So he said, okay, from this day forward, you shall be a trombone player. And I took it very seriously. It became my thing, my whole focus. And it got me through those high school years, which otherwise would have been pretty rough. I mean, I practiced for 2 hours every night. I took private lessons. I ended up taking lessons in high school at the University of Cincinnati's Conservatory of Music.
Nice.
And I played in a horn rock group on Friday nights and a dance band with some old guys. I call them old. They were probably 40 on Saturday nights. And I said, this is it. This is my thing. This is what I'm going to do with my life. And then came the day of my audition at the conservatory toward the end of my senior year in high school. And I got so nervous, really nervous. And when I tried to play, the notes came out like wet cement.
Yeah.
And that made me more nervous. And so I ended up forgetting the piece that I had to have memorized. And I just kind of crawled out of the room, in disgrace. And my whole world just kind of fell out from under me. So I went to college having no idea what to do with my life, kind of wandered into a degree in health education. Then I decided I didn't want to teach. So I came back home to my hometown, got a job inspecting restaurants for the local Board of Health. And I got this little 3-room apartment in a rundown house next to Shinley Distillery. And I remember waking up every morning to the smell of whiskey mash and the black soot that covered everything in my yard. The trees were black. Everything was black. And I was just depressed and frustrated. And I thought, how could my life have gone so wrong? And then one day, a friend of mine from high school came into my office. And he told me he was learning to fly. And I was shocked because, I'd always loved airplanes and thought about that. But I always thought pilots had to be really, really smart, like much smarter than I was, and especially in math, right? Well, this guy and I had been in the same freshman algebra class. And we had competed for the lowest grades on the exams. It's like, okay, the tests are based on 100% right. And I'd say, hey, Terry, I got a 20. What'd you get? Oh, I got a 15, man. I beat you, didn't I? So I started thinking about that. I thought, man, if this guy is learning to fly, I could learn to fly. And at that time in my life, I was so desperate for something to shake things up, some goal that I could work toward. And so one day, a real blustery, windy day in late March, I jumped in my car. I was feeling particularly bold that day. Jumped in my car, went to the local airport, and walked in. And there was this crusty old guy behind the desk. I said, I want to learn to fly. Sign me up. And he said, have you ever been up in a small plane? I said, I've never been off the ground. So he gave me a quizzitive look. And he said, well, normally we like to have our students do a demo flight before they commit, to taking lessons. I said, okay, let's go. And he pointed to the windsock. He said, you see how it's kind of flapping around in all directions? This is really not a good day. And I knew it was now or never. So I looked him in the eye and I said, if there's anybody here who will take me up, I want to go now. And there was this other gentleman sitting in the corner. He'd been reading the Wall Street Journal, and he was a very confident-looking guy, sort of a military look. And he looked up over the paper, and he said, I'll take him for a ride. And, oh, man, about 5 minutes into it, I must have been like 5 shades of green. And he looked over at me, and he said, take the controls. And I said, are you kidding me? It's all I can do to keep my breakfast where it belongs. And he said, take the controls. I'll tell you what to do. And sure enough, it was not this man's first rodeo. And within seconds, the nausea subsided, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
So I scheduled a lesson for the very next day and worked through all the ratings while I lived on, poverty pay, Cheerios and pork and beans was my diet. And became a flight instructor. That was my first job, which seemed always kind of backwards to me, being a brand new pilot and teaching other people how to fly. But that's what everybody did.
Yeah, they're still doing it.
Yeah.
We have a friend, we have a family member whose son graduated as a pilot, and now a couple of years he has to teach.
Yeah, build the time.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so I did that. And some stories, adventures in the new book that I'm working on now about all that. And then got a job with a local commuter airline, flying 30 passenger turboprop planes, 14 legs a day,
Wow.
no autopilots.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But that was a great learning experience, built the time. And then I got my dream job once I had the time with a corporation that was really in my own backyard, like 15 minutes away, that owned their own airport, 5 jets. And man, I was living the dream. You know?
Nice.
Yeah. So I stayed there for 12 years, and toward the end of that time, I had it made. I had everything that I'd always been taught was success in life. I had a great job, my friends and family respected the job, and I had a nice new house, new cars, a family, and but I was getting more and more unhappy by the day. I was just kind of feeling empty, and I said, man, what is this about? So I ended up going to a counselor, and she gave me, what was it called? The Myers-Briggs personality type inventory.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about that.
And she looked at that, she scored it, and she came back to me and she said, no wonder you're getting miserable. She said, according to this, you're all about the arts and people, like teaching or being a therapist or a minister or something like that. And I thought, wow, that sort of resonates with me. But how in the world would I make that kind of a leap?
Yeah, that's a big career change.
Yeah. So I chewed on that for a while, and I kept going back to her, and we'd talk about it. And then one day, I did what I had done before. I jumped in the car. I drove to Xavier University in Cincinnati, about an hour away, and I said, I want to see the chairman of the counseling department. And by some miracle, I was able to go in, right then and talk to him. And I said, I want to be a therapist. Sign me up. Where do I sign? What do I need to do? And so I did that, got the master's degree in counseling. And long story short, I ended up working with kids from a psych unit at Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, and I used horses in my work.
Okay.
I said, I don't want to do the typical sit in an office all day thing. I want to do something different. And I had seen what working with horses was doing for my daughter, who was kind of a struggling teenager. And so I worked with a horse trainer who helped me develop a program of mental health counseling with, that centered on horses, and sold it to the hospital. And we started out with like one group a day, 2 days a week. And within 6 months, we were doing 3 groups a day every day. And it was a full-time job.
Wow.
And I loved it. I mean, it was so cool. We saw amazing things happen. There was, one of the neat things that came out of that for me is that as I worked with these kids, I started thinking these kids aren't really sick. They have a diagnosis, but as I found out more about their lives and what they had gone through, it occurred to me that they were just reacting to environments and situations that they couldn't relate to, and they didn't know how to cope with.
Yeah.
Broken families, just all kinds of extremely dysfunctional things going on in their backgrounds. And so that got me looking at them differently, not just as a diagnosis, but as these kids who were just struggling to relate to life. Some of them were very sick. I remember there was one girl who was schizophrenic, heard voices in her head all the time. And we found out that whenever she was up on a horse, she would respond normally. It's like it gave her a whole new perspective, and all those defenses dropped, and you could carry on a normal conversation with her. But we could never figure out how to transfer that to everyday life situations.
Yeah.
And I don't know how all that turned out for her. But anyway, that was quite an experience. And a question formed in my mind. It was like, they kept sending me more and more and more of these kids, and I kept thinking, how can there be so many kids who are in this kind of shape, who need the kind of help that they're getting here? And of course, it became apparent, well, the families are breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, why are there so many families in such distress? And I started looking at the bigger picture, our society and what it's become and how different it was by that time, even from what it was when I was a kid.
Yes.
When we'd be outside until dark,
Right.
playing ball or whatever. And
Right.
Parents weren't worried a bit about us, They knew all the neighbors. And it's just such a different world now. And so I thought, well, no wonder. So I started writing down thoughts because I needed a way to deal with all the thoughts and emotions that I was having,
Exactly.
in this place. I mean, 6 months before I'd been flying private jets,
Right.
and now-
Right. Big change.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I started writing down thoughts, and I kept writing, and finally I realized, it's becoming a book.
Mm.
And that's what led really, or motivated me to write A World of His Own.
Oh, wow.
The first book that you did,
Yeah.
that you wrote, what the therapy sessions that you were doing with the kids, was that faith based too, or is that?
It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the Lord at that time.
Oh, okay.
I see.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it was secular-based counseling. That's all I was trained in.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But, I think there was a spiritual component about it. And even the kids said things, that they recognized that. Like all the counseling was done, instead of sitting in an office, they came out to a horse farm.
Yeah.
And that's where it was all done. And all the counseling was done around the interactions between the kids and the horses.
Mhm.
And so they would get out of the hospital van and they would just be in awe of the environment, with the rolling hills, the pastures, the horses out there, ducks swimming on the pond and all that. Some of them had never seen anything like that,
Yeah, I believe
in their
it.
lives.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We've had some of our kids when they were in college. Some of their friends would come visit, and they grew up in the city,
Yeah.
grew up near D.C. or up in Maryland, and come out here and visit us because we're sort of out in the country here, and tell us just how much they enjoyed like at night seeing stars. We had one that said,
Yeah.
"I've never seen stars," and
Yeah.
I didn't realize that 19, 20 years in in college, and this is the first time you've seen stars like we see stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand when you come from a certain aspect, especially if you're in an institution and then you come out to
Right.
the country. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you took your experiences, or you took your experiences and started putting together your first book. That's A World of His Own.
Yeah.
Right. And that developed into what kind of book is that? Just reflections, just life reflections, or?
I will say before I answer that question that it became something very different. When I started writing down the thoughts, it was one thing. It was my view on what's wrong with society, what's wrong with education, and the things that I thought needed to be changed, especially about public education.
Yeah, that's something that's being debated nowadays.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And right now, as far as
Yeah.
education, public versus private, and that kind of stuff.
Right. But at that time, I wasn't aware of what the root cause of all the problems really was.
Mhm.
Right.
I didn't discover that until much later. So I worked on the book. It just kind of came pouring out of me. And within a few months, I thought, okay, it's done. And I started researching publishing options.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something off. There was no energy behind it. And I said, I don't know what that is. I forced myself to go through the motions. I could go to this publisher or that one, but there was just no enthusiasm there. And I thought, what is up with this? And then I went through some things where life got really tough. My program at the hospital ended during the worst recession of U.S. history, the big recession of 2008.
Yeah, that was pretty tough.
Yeah, they had to cut my program, and life got tough. I was out of work for a long time. And the book got put on the shelf, really. And it wasn't until I'd been out of work for over a year, I had moved to Texas for a job that ended up disappearing shortly after I got there. And I basically ended up homeless and had become very, very ill and thought I was going to die there. And it's a long story, trying to shorten it here.
That's life. That's like, I mean, but that's almost like when you're writing a book, you have a character and you have that arc, the character arc where, he goes down, he finds a mentor, sort of like that. And what Gary's talking about is a lot like, character arcs in life as it is in a novel,
Yeah.
So you went down, so you were down and out in Houston and.
Yeah, and I had met this guy before things got really bad, who had invited me to a men's group that met in a church. And he said, that they're all local businessmen, and maybe we can at least help you to find some work. I was sick at the time, but not as sick as I eventually became. So I kept putting it off because I was deep into depression. I thought, nothing's going to come of this. When you're depressed, you lose hope. That's the worst part of it. But I finally did. I got desperate, and I said, okay, I'm going to go. And the man had told me there are two churches very close to each other, and they kind of look alike, so don't get the wrong church. So I'm wandering around in this church looking for these guys. Can't find them anywhere. But I pass the auditorium, and I hear a loud voice in there, a very commanding voice. Said somebody's speaking in there, and they had two small windows in the doors, and I stood on my tiptoes and looked through the window. And I could see the auditorium was packed. And I put my ear up to the door so I could hear what this man was saying. And he was a preacher from Los Angeles named Tim Story, who's known to be the evangelist to the stars. He worked with Robert Downey Jr. To get him off the drugs and back into the movies, and Dog the Bounty Hunter and several well-known people. And he was preaching there. And I put my ear up and I listened for a bit, and I said, I have never heard anything like this in my life. He was teaching the Bible straight up, and I had never heard that. And so I said, I got to go in. So I did. I sat there, listened, and I go, wow, where has this been all my life? And he said, okay, I'm coming back 2 more nights. So I went back every night, and it was the same thing. Like, oh my God, and the third night, toward the end, he started calling people up. He said, somebody out there's got a shoulder problem. Come on up here. I want to pray for you. And he would lay hands on them. And I said, oh, wait a minute. I've seen this stuff on TV. Everything he said had sounded so real and so good. But this can't be real.
Right.
It's all smoke. It's a show, and I got very angry, and I wanted to get up and just walk out of the place, but I couldn't. It was like I was glued to my seat. And finally I said, I got nothing to lose. Yeah. So I went up. He prayed for me. I fell on the floor like everybody else did. I told myself, I'm not going to do that, but I did. And I knew that in an instant that I was healed. And all the physical stuff, all the depression, everything, it was gone. Right. And so
so that was the beginning of your faith journey.
Yeah. And so I started going to a church down there, and I needed work still, and it wasn't long. I kept praying, and I said, Lord, I need 2 things. I need a job to get me out of the mess I'm in, and I need to know you. I need to understand the power that just worked in me to do this miracle. And another long story short, within a couple of weeks, I started networking with old pilot friends again. I hadn't done that for months because I had just given up. In the middle of that recession, I mean, everybody who operated aircraft was selling their airplanes, laying off pilots. But somebody gave me a name. It was a guy in Shreveport who managed private jets for owners who didn't have their own pilots. And he provided pilots for them. And I got hooked up with him, talked to him. He said, well, I've got a trip in a couple of weeks for an evangelist. Their ministry has a jet. and I need a co-pilot for the trip. Are you interested? And I said, oh, yes, anything. you know. And I met this guy, and a couple of weeks later, a guy called me back and said, I got another trip for him. Do you want it? I said, yeah. And I had a resume with me, and I laid it on the seat. And within a week or so, the preacher called me, and he hired me right there on the spot on the phone. And he said, you need to understand, this isn't the typical pilot job. You don't just get me where I need to go and go play golf. You know, you're a ministry employee. You're in all my meetings. You soak up every word and you learn. And I just thought, God, you just answered both my prayers.
Right.
In one fell swoop. That's how good you are.
Yeah.
You know, and then I realized what had been missing in the book. I realized after I had been with him for a while and learned from him and got into this instruction manual for life, which is what it is.
That is.
I realized that all the problems we're dealing with in our modern world kind of go back to having left this behind.
Yes.
And then I picked up the book again after years of not doing anything with it. And it changed. I changed. And I said, you know, this is the root of the problems. And it became something very different than what it was originally. That's why there was no energy behind it. And now there was.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so that sort of led to the book that we're talking about today, which is The Practical Guide to Changing Our World. Is that based on that first book?
It is. It's after this book came out, some people told me that it was a little difficult to plow through, because my intent there was to show that the elements of the modern world that are very counterproductive, and there are many of them, you know, our perception of time, relationships, our perception of work, purpose, all these things are like spokes on a wheel that go back to the same hub. And because I covered so much ground, people would say, could you maybe write a condensed version of the book that doesn't cover so much ground but makes the same points?
Right.
And so that's why this one came about. And there were some new things added to that one as well. So
That's nice.
Nice. It's sort of a pocket guide to your first book.
Right.
Or the Reader's Digest condensed version.
Yeah,
Remember
kinda
when
like
they used to
that.
come out with that? So it's a
Right.
condensed version of the first one.
Yeah.
So, your art, when did you get into painting?
Well, like I said, in elementary school, art was my sanity.
Okay.
But,
So I guess it was much later in life that you actually started
Yeah.
painting again? Okay.
The music came much sooner. I started recording music about over 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But then about 5 years ago, I just got the urge to see what I could do with oil painting.
Oh, okay.
I had taken a few classes in Cincinnati at the Art Institute there, a drawing class and a painting class. But I found a really great teacher up in Richmond. Her name's Nancy Jacey, and she showed me, you know, the basics, and I got rolling, and she started to say, hey, I think you need to maybe put some stuff out there, you know. So I found this little gallery in Gloucester and put things in there and sold a couple of things, but then the gallery closed up because the owner was too good to the artist. She wasn't taking enough commission, and she couldn't keep the place going. And then one day I was thinking about how to finish a painting, and one of the songs that I'd recorded kept coming to my mind. And I thought, maybe there's something here. You know, maybe I could make this a multimedia thing. And that's what I had begun to do at that little gallery. And since then, I haven't really known where to pitch that again.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to work on that, I think, together somehow.
Yeah. So you also record music.
Yeah.
How would you describe, I guess, the type of music that you like to record?
Well,
I know you just put an album out.
Right. That album was the stuff that I did years and years ago.
Okay.
And now that there are streaming platforms and everything, you know, I thought, well, okay, I'll put it out there.
Yeah, I saw it on Bandcamp.
But it is mostly what I would call melodic ambient music.
Yes.
It's kind of easy listening, but with a definite, you know, melody structure and
Right.
orchestral music. And the stuff I've been doing lately at a studio up in Richmond is a real variety. I did a jazz piece up there.
Wow.
Called Cruisin'. I did a piece that ended up kind of with a southern rock flavor.
Oh, wow.
And another piece that's more like the old stuff, kind of easy listening orchestral piano and orchestra music. So we'll see.
Do you use any music to inspire any of your creativity, like painting, or do you listen to music while you paint?
Well, the first stuff that I did way back came about as I was, I always play basically by ear, and I'd sit down at the piano and I'd try to peck out a song that I really liked, and often it would branch off in another direction and become a tune, all of its own. So a lot of my stuff started that way, but the things I've done lately are just sort of come to me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, and that's the what do you use to compose your music, I guess?
Right.
So when you go into the studio, what are you using? What are you doing?
The first stuff that I did was all done on a home studio in my house. I had met a guy early on when I was getting ideas and didn't know how to record them, a guy named James Hart, who taught electronic music composition and recording at Xavier. I met him while I was working on my master's in counseling there, and took his classes, and he kind of took me under his wing and helped me to set up a studio in my house. So it was all electronic and done just me, layering tracks.
Right.
The last few pieces I did live at a studio in Richmond, a great sound engineer up there. We had musicians come in. I laid down the rhythm guitar track for the first piece. Then we had a dobro player from Cincinnati. We had a bass player from Nashville come in.
Session
and then this guy who was phenomenal with violin and cello, and it just came together. And it was so much more gratifying to do this with people,
right.
In a studio.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than just in my living room.
Yeah.
So that's been a real kick.
Are you looking to put some of that out?
Yeah, actually, those are on Bandcamp as well as singles.
Oh, are they? Okay.
okay.
Yeah, single tracks.
And how can people find you on Bandcamp? That's under your name, Gary Brown, or?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Because when I went into it myself as a consumer, I found that there were like 6 Gary Browns. And so you have to know the name of the album or the tracks, and the album is called Something Different.
Something different.
And then the tracks are Cruising, Flight, and Smooth Landings.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, we'll put that in the description
we'll
on
put it in the description
video so people can find it.
Yeah,
we'll
great.
put some links in there for you.
Great.
So they can find it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so your artwork, are you displaying it anywhere now, or?
No.
No? Are you looking
Not right at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
But he will have it at the Gwen's Island Festival this year.
Yeah.
I hear he's
Right.
going to be there with
Thanks
it.
to you guys.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I was getting at, though, he
Uh-huh.
does have an author page, and that we update on our website,
Right,
at Mermaid
right.
Cove Productions. And so, if you end up doing an art show or something like that, we can put,
Right.
a link in there or
Right.
Stuff like that for.
And he has you have a Facebook page, Instagram page, and also a website. We'll have that put in on the links. So if anybody wants to find you there, for sure.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, that was very nice, and thank you so much for coming on to our podcast here and giving us a little bit of background. We haven't talked a lot about the book, though. Let's talk a little bit about your book, and maybe are there any favorite spots or chapters that you like?
I think the chapter on purpose, finding
That's a
your
good one.
purpose in life, probably is my favorite, and I think maybe the most needed. And the context for that is that our purpose comes from knowing God. And, I discovered a book way back before I decided to become a counselor, to make that transition from flying to counseling. A friend I had met gave me a book called What Color is Your Parachute by a Christian career counselor named Richard Nelson Bowles. And it changed my whole perspective. There was a section in the appendix, a page in there that really grabbed me and changed my whole outlook on the process, of finding my purpose in life. It said, we all have a 3-part mission. And the first part of that is coming to know the power that created you and developing relationship with that power. Second is doing everything you can in every moment of every day to make the world a better place, whether it's picking some trash up off the sidewalk or going to visit somebody in prison, whatever it might be. And third is exploring and discovering the talents and gifts that God gave you and developing them and using them in a setting that greatly appeals to you, that brings you joy and best accomplishes God's purpose for you on earth. And I thought, wow, that really sums it up. And I have a paraphrase of that in the book because I think that's very important. So many people struggle for so long, for their whole lives, for this search for purpose.
Right.
And Mr. Bowles, the author of that book, made it very clear that you have to do these things in order. First, you come to know God and His nature and His ways, and then you do whatever you can to make the world a better place, and then you discover your gifts, talents, and abilities, and God will show you how He wants you to use those things to the fullest.
There you go.
So,
Well, you do have you were talking about the chapter on purpose. You have a quote in here that you wrote yourself, and it says, "A goal without a purpose is like a rudderless ship at sea that circles but never reaches its destination."
yeah,
I think that's pretty good. That sums it all up right
yeah,
there.
I'm glad you brought that up because we are so trained, to seek and accomplish goals. And goals and purpose are not the same thing,
No,
not necessarily.
they're
Goals can be aligned with your purpose, but not necessarily. And there are many times in my life where I would go after something and accomplish it only to realize that's not really it, and why is that? Because it wasn't really my purpose in life. And it took me most of my life to figure that out. So that's why a great passion of mine is getting the knowledge of God, His nature, and His ways back into childhood education, as it was in the very beginning of our nation.
Do you have any other books that you're working on, Gary, or are you thinking about?
Yeah, I've got a good start on one called The Pilot and the Little Green Bible, which I certainly intend you folks to publish for me. And it's more about my adventures, I guess you'd say, as a pilot over the course of my 40-year career. Interesting situations we found ourselves in and got out of, and the people I met along the way. There's some really interesting stories about people that I met, and so I think it'll be entertaining and informative.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And where can we find his book, Angie?
Well, the Practical Guide to Changing Our World, we can find it on our website. You can also find it on Amazon. And I think Barnes & Noble online. Almost any online store we can find it at. Yep.
Excellent.
But we'll put a link to it on our website in the description too. So if anybody's interested. And I think A World of His Own can be found on Amazon.
Right. And Barnes & Noble
And Barnes &
online.
Noble online.
Well, great. Well, I think once again, I want to thank Gary for being brave enough to come on to this podcast.
With us.
To be one of the first to do it, our first guest. And thank you so much. That was a great insight into what the original book was, how it came about.
Right.
And it was really great to hear the arc, your own character arc, which is in the book itself, or is how it was developed. So,
Oh.
again, if anybody would like to get your book, we'll have some links down so you can get it, or go to our website, mermaidcoveproductions.com, and you can find his books. And we are definitely looking forward to your next book, your next art, your next music. You got a lot going on, Gary. You are a busy man.
I think it's called ADD, but
sometimes that's good.
yeah.
Sometimes that is good, But thanks again.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
if you like this episode,
Like and subscribe.
And and also hit the notifications.
That's right.
So when the next
'Cause we have more
episode is
coming.
coming out, because we got more coming out. So let's see if we can. We'll leave this episode again with some music, if it works this time too. It worked last time. We'll see. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
See you next time.